Today I'm going to be looking at the movie Hitch. Admittedly, I have tenuous relationships with love and romance stories, and love and romance in and of itself. One day I will find Cupid and give him a beating for every single broken heart. Not just for me, the entire world. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of them. His day will come. Anyways, but stories where love and romance is the main focus instead of something else like, say, action, comedy, mystery, etc. Because there's plenty of lovely stories where something else is the main focus and romance is just allowed to blossom between two characters that spend a lot of time together and enjoy each other's company. But when romance is the main thing, well, some people can put aside all the problems with it and suspend their disbelief. When there's only romance to focus on, there's, for me at least, and probably for many of you out there, a couple of things off can really, really ruin it for me. And if it doesn't have one of those other genres to fall back on, the movie can be tedious to sit through. But today we're looking at Hitch, which is one of the better ones I've seen, that has really solid first two acts, and then the third act doesn't really capitalize well on what it established, because it goes for that third act conflict, misunderstanding, and they brought pretty well all the cliches that come with it. And normally, because the other 2/3 are very good, I might forgive that. But that last third, there's just one big problem I have with it. But first, let's take a look at the rest of the movie. See, Hitch is a romantic comedy released in 2005 that stars Will Smith as the eponymous Hitch, Kevin James as a client he takes on called Albert Brenneman, Eva Mendes as Sarah Milas, the love interest for Hitch, and then Amber Valletta, who actually wasn't familiar with it. One of those, she looked familiar, but she has one of those faces that looks like a couple of different people. And after looking up her acting history, I have to feel bad that I didn't recognize her, because I have actually seen over half of the films she's been in. And most importantly, she was a regular or a recurring character for a bit on a show called Revenge that I actually really, really liked, despite not normally being into that sort of show. Anyways, the movie opens with a really solid narration by Hitch that sets the tone for the story and just really, really hooks you in. Due to YouTube being weird, I'm going to be cutting out the usual amount of dialogue I have in. It's going to be one or two key lines, and normally I like to show you the large chunk of the narration, because most of you will probably want to watch the movie just after that, because he shows an understanding that most protagonists in a romantic comedy don't get to know. But he's basically coaching various guys that he's counseling through the introduction, where they finally approach the girl they're interested in. Because all the guys Hitch takes on have a common thing. They're nice guys who have fallen for a beautiful girl that they normally wouldn't approach, or normally don't think they can approach. And so they hire Hitch, and Hitch comes in to kind of talk them through it and keep them focused and get them introduced and such. And his tactic of introduction is shock and awe. He wants the guy to stand out in the girl's mind to get them to the date where they can really shine. And he has a few basic principles, and a lot of them just like to body language and all that other sort of stuff. But my two favorite principles are: any man can sweep any woman off her feet provided he has the right broom, and you can't use what you don't have. If you're shy, be shy. If you're confident, be confident. Just be yourself. Later he adds to it, if you're fake, girls will see through that. And there's probably a few disclaimers you can put on there because that's partially disproven later, but we'll get to that. But it sets him up as this sort of bridge between the nice guys and the girls, which is a common theme through this movie, where the various main characters and even some of the side characters are kind of not quite stereotypes, but they're representatives, because this whole movie comes across as a sort of character piece where it kind of represents the opposing factions that often come into play during maybe romantic comedies, but sort of love and other sorts of things. We have Hitch, who is a nice guy who's figured out how to be confident and smooth and kind of plan out the dates a little bit and have an idea going in so that you're not tripping all over yourself and all that. And so after that, we're introduced to Sarah, who is a gossip columnist who's kind of the other end of the spectrum. She acts as sort of a gatekeeper between beautiful girls and the guys who would take advantage of them. The only problem with her philosophy is that one of her opening quotes, because it opens with her talking on a phone, and she gives a line that's, what is it about all guys that makes them want to sleep with anything that moves, even when they're with someone as, I think it was beautiful as Allegra Cole. After she caught Allegra's current boyfriend cheating on her in a beach somewhere with some sort of brunette, he's just briefly looked over, and it's just kind of a setting up sort of thing. The problem with Sarah is that she very much doesn't see how wrong she is. Shortly after this, she calls herself a realist. But a realist doesn't speak in absolutes like that. They don't project their own feelings onto an entire faction of people without treating them as individuals with their own minds and actions. Now, a lot of times it's a warning sign when someone calls themselves a realist, and I guess I am. I tell people my philosophy and they tell me I'm a realist. And mine is just that I can see how things could be worse, I can see how they can be better, and I understand that while a large chunk of people may have a predominant section that acts a certain way, there are still going to be members who may believe that and still act properly. But I still tread with caution in some areas because people still make those assumptions. I like it if the whole world treated people as individuals, but they sometimes don't run into that. Anyway, shortly after that, Sarah has some interactions with her co-workers that establish that Sarah is career-focused, and she may even be using her job to cover her own insecurities. Basically, as a gossip columnist, she seems to focus on like the relationships and how they're going south, and so she sees so much of the seedy underside that she doesn't necessarily see the positives. But we're introduced to Max, Sarah's boss, who I actually find a really intriguing character. Max is very worldly to a degree. He's got more depth than your average newspaper boss, because a lot of them either go to the extremes. A lot of times you either have the ones who are so focused on the stories that they don't really care that their employers are destroying their own lives or putting themselves in constant danger, or they're opposite. They're so worried about being kind of family friendly and treating all their employees well that they're generally working on failing and they need some sort of big story to save them. Max does a very good job of being in between. He'll kind of berate them a little bit when they're putting their work before themselves or relationships or whatever. But if they're bringing in big stories, then doing good work, then he still rewards the good work. He just voices his warning, which I really like, because you kind of need both. While the business-minded one will usually succeed more, it doesn't help if your employees resent you. Just saying. But after that, we move back to Hitch. We find out that while he does talk a big game, he might not actually buy everything he is selling himself. Find out that his backstory is that he was kind of in very much the same area as the guys he started to help. And after a bad heartbreak in college, he kind of reinvented himself. And then we get a line that just play the clip.
Because with no guile and no game, there's no girl.
Yeah, that goes against everything he established in his opening narration. Don't leave. There's a reason for it. Anyways, Hitch goes to meet with his next client, Albert, who seems to be the epitome of dorkiness, coming across as very awkward and uncomfortable in his own skin. And I don't wear suits, and I don't exactly like them. I don't like anything with a lot of layers like that, and I don't like wearing sleeves underneath sleeves, and I'm just weird about clothes. But I have to feel sorry for any suit Albert wears, just the amount of mustard and stuff, and I'm sorry, poor suit. Anyways, Albert is one of the tax consultants for Allegra Cole, kind of this board of advisors, I guess her dad set up, and he's kind of the junior man on the account, learning or whatever. We don't really get much on his actual job. But Allegra Cole is a rich heiress who Albert has fallen for. And so Allegra Cole, being kind of a celebrity and part of the focus for Sarah throughout the movie and the stories, because all of her gossip columns so far that we see are kind of based on Allegra. She's set up as kind of the representative of all the beautiful women who may not be entirely secure. We don't get to see much of her except for interactions with Albert, which, because they're kind of what they call the beta couple, where they get together a little bit easier, and their conflicts are mainly used to fuel the alpha couple, which in this situation is going to be played by Hitch and Sarah. And because while Hitch is very much interacting with Albert a lot to kind of coach him and help him through the various stages, Sarah's job puts her at the very behind the scenes. She doesn't really interact with Albert, with Allegra Cole. She interacts with Hitch, but we'll get to that in a moment. Anyways, Albert gives a very, very touching speech that, cutting down the amount of quips, it basically amounts to, do you know what it feels like to wake up every day knowing the woman you love is going to bed with the wrong man, but just hoping she finds a little bit of happiness, even if it's not with you? And I'll admit that's hit me once or twice in my life. I'd say you live and you learn, but I really don't want to get over that. I'm just that kind of guy. Anyways, Hitch agrees to help Albert, who will end up putting Hitch's methods to the test. But Albert and Hitch use the next tax consultation meeting as Albert's chance to impress Allegra, which Albert does by talking to her like a person and telling her to act like an adult when she backs down after meekly asking about investing her own money in her friend's fashion business, with the head tax consultant going, "That's most unorthodox," and saying, "We'll pick something you can invest in," like a good little adult child. Albert ends up sealing the deal, as they say, by telling her how he respects how she handles the publicity, and then quits his job when his boss tries to silence him. May not be the smartest move, but some days you need to do something along the lines of putting on that spacesuit and drifting into space after the girl you love, even if you have no plan to save you two once you catch up to her. But luckily for him, she's so impressed, she decides she wants his tax advice more closely and wants to meet to discuss areas where she can take more risk. Now, it is around this time that Hitch and Sarah first meet, with Hitch saving Sarah from Chip, a guy who has only a couple of minutes of screen time but manages to hit a wide range of bad moves and plays. Some of the highlights from Chip include he shows up with the wrong drink as an icebreaker, even though he could probably ask the bartender what she's drinking. A little bit of research never hurts. Follows it up with a terrible pickup line. I think it was something like, "Excuse me, you look like my next girlfriend." Ugh. All that makes me think is, "Excuse me, you look like the next intensive care patient." urgent care, especially to remove that foot from your mouth. Anyways, she tries to tell him off, but he, clearly not paying attention, just says, "You have pretty eyes," or something like that, which is nice, but you kind of have to listen to what they're saying. And even Hitch feels the need to intervene when Chip starts spitting out this gem.
Are you always so shut down and afraid that the right man might make you feel like
a natural woman?
Oh, Chip, maybe one day you'll find a girl who finds that charming. But for now, try some better material or, just try less. Hitch has slightly better success with Sarah by pretty well not trying at all, introducing himself and even getting her name and occupation before saying his farewell when she expects him to dig in and show interest. Nice, Hitch. Nice. Anyways, we're treated to an early appearance by Michael Weston, playing a very convincing Wall Street scumbag who wants Hitch's advice on banging a girl who won't return his calls, and Hitch rightly refuses him.
See what I'm doing? This is what I'm about. Power suit, power tie, power steering. People can wince, cry, beg, but eventually they do what I want.
Wow, Michael is really committed to the scumbag routine. Anyways, Hitch convinces Sarah to go on a date with him by way of walkie-talkie since he doesn't like it when a guy calls a girl who didn't give him her number. Points for creativity there. Their date consists of a jet ski ride to Ellis Island where we get the first glimpse that in their world, Lord Chaos dislikes people falling for each other, not being themselves around each other. When Hitch's jet ski mysteriously dies and he ends up kicking her in the head trying to get onto her jet ski. Nothing says romance like giving your love interest a mild concussion. At the island, she shows mild discomfort while looking around, and while looking at her great-great-grandfather's signature, she shows a very unpleasant reaction. And then we find out he committed genocide before disappearing, and then Lord Chaos decides Hitch's jacket needs to get stuck in the cab door, even though he's behaving. Hitch and Albert then set to work on this first meeting, treating it like it is the first date, with Hitch trying to mold Albert to be a little smoother, and while Albert technically follows his advice, Albert just cannot help but be himself, if not, albeit a more confident version of himself.
Have you been to that new Brazilian restaurant?
No, but I am looking.
It's disgusting. I'm writing an article about it.
And did you see the new installation at MoMA?
Yes, did you?
Disgusting. Disgusting.
What was your name, Eggnog?
Egon.
What do you think of the design of the Jets' new football stadium on the west side? Let me guess.
Disgusting?
Think it over. We'll be back.
Thank you. I can't stand those guys.
Really? I kind of like them.
I don't know what it is, but I like Albert. A lesser man might insult Albert's dancing, but honestly I feel awkward and uncoordinated even doing Hitch's contained style of dancing, so I'd hate to see what I look like. In preparation for a possible kiss at the end of the night, Hitch tells Albert the secret to kissing and
Is to go 90% of the way and then hold.
while I can't tell you if that works, had I heated it during my first kiss, I might have hit her lips instead of the corner of her mouth, trying to decide whether to be a gentleman and go for the cheeks, or man up and go for the actual kiss. Also, while I was tempted to cut the scene, I just want to say that this kind of proves that Kevin James can do a guy-on-guy kiss scene convincingly. So whatever was wrong with I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry was almost certainly Adam Sandler's fault. And Hollywood, if you want to do a remake, try Kevin James and Will Smith as the leads. Just saying. Sarah finds out about Allegra and Albert's possible budding romance, and tracking through leads finds out that the tickets for the two were actually in Hitch's name. So she sets up a second date with him as an excuse to prod him for information, or maybe use prodding him for information as an excuse for a second date. And even her boss isn't sure which story to buy. At the date, we get to see more of Max, and we actually get to meet his wife, who is a psychiatrist, which actually explains quite a bit about Max. It also continues this theme the movie has where each of the romantic pairings are the same yet different, with a lot of it coming down to they have similar personalities, but their experience in life led them down different paths that kind of complement each other fairly well. Albert and Allegra are both somewhat dorky and aren't exactly comfortable in their own skins, but Allegra had to learn to contain it for the camera, while Albert ended up in a career where he didn't really have to learn to contain it. If he just sits there and bees quietly or doesn't talk to people. It doesn't really show. And both of them on their dates are trying their hardest not to let their dorkiness show. And Allegra's a little bit more practiced at it than Albert, but the fact that Albert's messing up or being dorky more actually relieves her a little bit because she doesn't feel as bad if she messes up. And then both Max and his wife both like to dig into people and find out who they are, but Max uses what he's learned to sell papers while his wife uses it to help people be better. And if you watch how Max acts, I can't necessarily say whether or not it's her influence or he picked it up beforehand, but he does show a little bit of knowledge about psychiatry and psychology in his interaction. Hitch and Sarah, will find out in a moment, they both have a major event in the past that defines how they act now, and they both prefer to work from the shadows. But Hitch uses his skills to help nice guys connect with the women they have fallen in love with, and Sarah tries to protect vulnerable women from the guys who would take advantage of them. But back to the date. Max pushes Sarah into deciding whether this will be a date or an interview by prodding in both directions, with her deciding to ask Hitch about Albert and Allegra instead of finding out Hitch's intentions for her. With this, Hitch becomes guarded again, and because he isn't playing by the universe's rules, it's time for him to get an allergy that he didn't know about. They load him up on Benadryl to reduce the swelling, and he gets drunk off of it. You know, I've tried Benadryl, and I have trouble getting down the normal dose. I can't imagine someone taking more than the needed amount, let alone enough to get drunk. Ugh, fake cherry taste. Ugh. But in Hitch's loopy state, he is more honest while still managing to be somewhat guarded. Must have practice. And Sarah lets down her guard a bit too because he isn't acting suave for once. She reveals her younger sister almost drowned when Sarah was 10, which is her reason for acting as a pseudo big sister to the women of the city with her gossip column. And Hitch starts to hint towards his own backstory, but is still guarded and ultimately passes out before revealing too much. And then in the morning we get to see a bit of Sarah's knee-jerk reaction. She barely looks around for Hitch before she is screaming into a pillow that she was a fool for trusting a man, who shows up as she's screaming. It barely took her 20 seconds to assume the worst. I know, I timed it. Though something I find intriguing is that in all the kisses between Hitch and Sarah, she's actually the one that goes in most of the way, the 90%, and he meets her the remaining percentage. Just found that curious. Now, I've been ignoring her thus far because she's been fairly minor and she is in a few interesting scenes, but she's a sleeper agent. But this is Sarah's friend Casey. She was the girl Michael Weston was wanting Hitch to help him sleep with, and she's fairly naive. Earlier she told Sarah about meeting him in the laundry store, where he said he was buying pajamas for his mother, and Sarah told her it was almost certainly a lie, and it was, but she preferred to be optimistic and not assume he was lying from the start. Michael Weston apparently turned on the charm and BS'd his way right into her pants, which she fell for. Now, I don't want to say too much about this because I feel like I'm picking on Casey, but there's a fine line between being trusting and this. Even if you want to give the benefit of the doubt, it is still a good idea to make him wait, even if he does sound perfect, because, you know, even Jesus lost his temper and let loose on people selling goods inside a church, so no one's perfect. Anyways, apparently as Michael Weston was leaving, he said,
"Date Dr. My ass."
What does that mean?
It means he's really out there.
And this leads them to believe the date doctor helped Michael be the perfect date to get laid. Yes, because when someone was helpful, that's exactly how I think them. My teeth don't hurt and they're all clean. Dentist, my ass. Oh, my mail arrived on time and in perfect condition. Mailman, my ass. What? Some guy out there saw world hunger, achieve world peace, cured the common cold, and a cost-effective cure for cancer? Humanitarian super scientist, my ass. Sarah confronts Michael Weston, and he gives up Hitch's card to save his own ass.
All this for a lousy leg.
No, I'm starting to think he might actually be a scumbag. I'm going to skip over most of the second date between Albert and Allegra, but I just want you to see how adorable they are.
No, I'm sorry. Hand me down.
That was it. You got it. Do it again. Okay. Do it again.
Allegra.
Yes?
Save those in your memory for later. Hitch's next client is a sting by the gossip column where Sarah finds out that Hitch is the date doctor. And this is where the movie finishes introducing its third act, misunderstandings to the couple's a conflict to overcome. The problem is Sarah once again reverts to cynicism at her date with Hitch. She doesn't believe anything he says, and the way she is acting, even if she gave him a chance to explain himself, she wouldn't believe him. And I understand this. It's the nature of trust. Once one thing is stated, it often taints everything else, even if they aren't related to each other. The problem is she ignores the evidence to the contrary and runs the article anyway. And maybe if she had run it trashing Michael Weston, then maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But no, not only does she run it, she runs it under the headline, "Can this man get you into bed with Allegra Cole?" Not only did she paint Hitch and what he does in a bad light, she breaks up the adorable couple she saw at the Knicks game, paints the nice Albert as a con man whose every move was manufactured. But with that headline, she insinuates that Allegra was loose enough to sleep with Albert even though we saw him leave after the kiss. Now, that is pretty bad, but it gets worse. You see, apparently, this isn't a small paper only a few people read. No, we see a random couple arguing on the street over whether the man hired Hitch. And then at a speed dating session later, everyone in the room knows who the date doctor is when Hitch is outed by Sarah. This means her article calls into question every relationship that started in the last few years, possibly even before Hitch started doing his job, since she has no way of knowing how many people he has helped or how long he has been working. This article calls into question every current relationship, and now every guy, whether they act smooth and calm like Hitch or awkward and dorky like Albert, are probably manipulating you with the help of the date doctor, which means it probably sinks many relationships that might bloom. She has committed a genocide on love, and they even foreshadowed it. Hitch does confront her about it and calls her out on how she is acting and how she has been acting, but the potential devastation she just caused is glossed over, and we never see a retraction or a column with a legitimate interview. Now, she does try to apologize to Hitch, who is back to being guarded, and when Albert talks to Hitch, Hitch is called out for not quite believing in love, despite it being his job. Hitch, feeling bad, goes to talk to Allegra and try to explain what he actually does, and she reveals the stuff that she found endearing about Albert was the dorky stuff Hitch told Albert to avoid doing. It seems Hitch has it right when he said, "Be you," instead of "you need guile and game to get the girl." Though Hitch claims he did nothing, which isn't quite true, because Hitch is essentially what they call a magic feather, where the feather itself does nothing, but having it and believing that it has power instills the holder in the confidence to go for it, which is what all of them lack. He also gives tips that they may or may not know to begin with, but the confidence is the main thing. And Albert and Allegra do reconcile, and Hitch rushes off to try to earn his own happy ending, embracing Lord Chaos's desire for humiliation to reveal his true self by acting foolish to show he cares. Though for a gossip columnist, Sarah is fairly unobservant to some things. Everything about Hitch screams trust issues, even without knowing his backstory. So the fact that after you hurt him, even if unintentionally, the fact that he decides to come back should be a testament in and of itself to how he feels about her. And of course, since at this point we've left originality of the movie behind to enter the cliche zone, it ends in a wedding. Ugh, why must it always be a wedding? Bah, humbug. I suppose it is to show that even with everything that happened, people can still find love. I felt better had this ended with Hitch, Albert, and Allegra suing Sarah for defamation with maybe a class action for psychological damage from readers who had their trust shattered. Well, that was Hitch. And if you can overlook the rather weak ending, it is an enjoyable film with believable romance and a very well written score that sets the mood well in various scenes. Well, join us next time when I have no idea what I'll be tackling. I'm Caydor, signing off.